The big question I have goes like this. The storyline for me for this year for Worlds was identical to the storyline for last Worlds, which is I never really thought LCK was going to be the better region. I just thought, like, LPL's the best region, but can LCK have the best team? And spoiler, since only Koreans fucking win Worlds, like, even the LPL teams that win have Korean stars in them typically. To me, it's like, you have to acknowledge that Korea obviously still produces amazing League of Legends players, blah, blah, blah. But obviously, because this time they didn't win, and there is not going to be this version of Damwon, like, did this Worlds in any way alter your perception of the parity between the regions? Like, if LPL is the best, are they the best by far? Did that work? For example, obviously the semis, people would have said it was LCK because they had the 3 Korean teams. Where do you come down on this one? Where are we sitting on the whole region discussion?
I find it very hard to view things as regions right now, actually, because, again, kind of goes back to the whole polarizing thing about LPL teams, right? When actually there's a team which is really good at a certain meta, but they have just as huge flaws sometimes, like like RNG having some issues against like the Melee versus Enchanter thing, which actually became very, very important as things came on. You can kind of like draw some esoteric comparisons and say, okay, well, the LPL has, you know, X level of competition most of the time regionally, all this other stuff. Maybe the bottom end of their table is slightly higher than bottom end of LCK. I don't know. Like, you can draw some comparisons like that. I do think LCK had a strong showing this Worlds comparative to what I thought they would have. I thought that potentially they would not have a team get out of groups, and obviously LNG was the team which didn't make it out of groups in that sense, right? And also FPX, right? So I think that, like, as a whole region, I think LCK probably outperformed the LPL, but actually it's really hard to judge that, because was it the LPL teams failing because of their polarizing takes on the meta? Is it fair to compare them to the tournament meta at that point? Well, of course, that's the results, but, you know, it adds in that extra perspective.
Yeah, on top of that, I mean, it's just LPL won both MSI in Worlds, right? That's a fact. Then you look at a little bit more and you're like, okay, 17 out of the 20 players that played during the last top 4 of Worlds are Korean. So it is hard, obviously, in terms of talent producing region, as you say, the Thorin, LCK is and probably will stay if the ruling about video games in China stays the same. LCK should become,
for sure, yeah.
It should become like the main factory for talent in the East.
Especially with China's LDL, like, under 18s thing coming in. That'll hit in a couple of years. We've got to keep an eye on that.
Yeah, exactly. This should prevent completely like growth of new talent in China. So they're gonna have the same issue that NA has with EU, where they need to import massively from Korea, probably like leave the import. But that's another topic. But for the time being, we already see that in terms of talent producing region, LCK is the best, right? And then I would say that this year specifically, at Worlds at least, because it's very hard to compare Worlds and MSI. They're 2 different games at this point. I think that LCK performed better, because I feel like if it was just a semi-final between T1 and Damwon, and Damwon would have lost, I would have had more mixed opinion about it. But I feel like Genji, which is not the best team, not even the best looking team of LCK, has had a very, very good showing over the whole tournament. They knocked Mad Lions out of seed 1 for their group. They had a very, very strong showing in quarters. They went to game 5 against the world champion, and they're not even the best in Korea. And maybe if the T1 had been on that side of the bracket, and once we come back to the format, I think that they would have probably won or gave as well of a fight against EDG. So if you'd say that EDG has been the best team at this tournament, and you have 3 teams, right, out of your 4 teams, you have 3 teams that can go.
Yeah, we're just not mentioning HLE at this point.
Right, but I mean, HLE is like, it's an incomplete team, right? It's very hard to rate.
Spiky, very spiky.
I try to compare more the 3 best teams, and the 4-1 is a bonus. I don't think I still think that the 4 teams that LPL sent were pretty good, and the 4 team, but I feel like top 3 goes definitely to LCK, because you have 3 teams that can actually go in game 5 against your best team. And as you said, Thorin, if we replay the final 20 times, I'm pretty sure that Damwon wins more than 10. So
yeah, for sure.
From that standpoint, I would say LCK is the best region, but structurally, in terms of growth, money, power, and stuff, it's the same thing as NA versus EU, right? Money talks, and there is a point where they're gonna get the best players everywhere, and it's gonna be very hard for LCK to compete.
Yes.
I think what's really impressive on that side from the LPL thing is that, because this was a big question for me about the LEC this year, is actually, it's like, you've got good players now, you have them, it's just about arranging them in a way from like a general manager standpoint where they're actually on the same page, they want to play the game in the same style. That actually leads to a coherent game pattern and stuff like that. You can buy all the players you want, but you still need to make them into a unit which actually responds to what you want them to do, and doing that even with a large amount of money is sometimes quite difficult, and yet the LPL has still managed to make some incredibly strong teams by getting these big players in. So I think that is another factor which you kind of add in and say actually the LPL is really good at building rosters on the whole for its top teams anyway.
One thing I wanted to ask you about was, obviously for the final, I mean, as you said, Nymera, I personally would have probably given it to JJ. I thought he had a great finals, but I think they technically gave it to Scout on the broadcast, and that's just the finals MVP.
Good amount of good feelings there, yeah.
I mean, just narratives on that one, I think, on that one. But I personally, for me, I'm more interested in who was the MVP of the whole tournament, because obviously the sample size is way more. You have all the different teams you play against. Right, I will say, I don't actually know that he should get the winner for this one. I think it probably should be a Damwon player, right? Who would you pick, Sabatina and Nymera? Who would be your MVP for the whole Worlds? And you don't have to pick from the winning team if you don't want to. It's up to you.
I'd say Canyon. I think that he played out of his mind 90% of the games he played. And I don't think even in the games where we say he hasn't been playing perfectly, he just hasn't been solo, single decision winning game level of play. But most of the time, if you look at how he's been playing around information with his team and the decision he makes in jungle and the impact he has been making on the map overall, I think that it's pretty clear that he had because it's very hard to compare it to other lanes, but I don't think there is a single jungle besides TAT in the final that has been as consistent as Canyon and during this tournament. Oh, you disagree?
There's an outside angle that BDD is in with a shout, actually, because Genji gets nowhere close to the top without BDD. There's a chance you could throw that name in. Obviously there's the triple bubble thing against TL, but he was playing like a man possessed.
But if you look at the pro view of BDD, I've watched the pro view. I mean, he bleeds in lane. He makes so many wave management mistakes, small trade mistakes. He hasn't been as good as he has been really good after the laning phase.
But then it kind of comes down to importance to your team kind of thing, as opposed to peak play and all this other stuff. That's what I say. There's an outside angle to say in terms of importance to the team, BDD's probably up there with Canyon. I probably would go Canyon, even though I think that his finals was not his best series. They definitely weren't his best games. It probably goes to Canyon, but for me, it's honorable mentions to BDD.
Yep.
I think they're the obvious names. Canyon, Showmaker, maybe JJ as an outside choice.
Yeah.
They're the fair. Scout one's not terrible.
Maybe you could give it to someone. I mean, Mako had a really good tournament again. If you're talking about EDG's continual MVP, it's pretty much always Mako, because he's been a consistent member, but he's such a high level support. He enables so much of what they do.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.